Hey everyone, I just want to talk about how I became fluent in Portuguese in just 4 months. Now, it wasn't easy. It took a lot of effort, but I don't really have like a natural knack for learning languages. So I really think anyone could do this. And I think as well, these tips will basically apply to any language. So let's get started. Tip number one, focus on the most common verbs first. Now, this is one of the biggest mistakes I see people make when they're trying to learn a language, is that they go for vocab. They start labeling things with post-it notes and they try to learn different words, and they think they put a post-it note on a tree, oh, arvore. They put a post-it note on a glass of water, agua, and they just try to memorize a language. That is not the way to go. Trust me, there are millions of words you will get discouraged before you ever learn the language. There's a time for that, and that will come over time. But instead of that, learn the top 100 most used verbs. These are verbs like to be, to do, to have, to know, to come, to go. The top 100 verbs constitute about 40% of the language as far as how much people use them. So you get a jump start 40% with 100 words. So rather than learn a ton of words randomly, learn those 100, but learn all of their conjugations. Okay, that's a big tip. Okay, tip number two, immerse yourself as much as you can in the language. Now, I had a special situation because I was actually living in Brazil. Everyone that I was with I spoke only Portuguese. No one spoke English. So I really had to remember words and make those connections. And I had to have those hard conversations where we're trying to communicate. And that was huge for me. That was honestly why I learned so fast. If you don't have that type of situation, that's okay. Immerse yourself as much as you can. At least have some kind of constant contact with the language so that it sticks with you. Now, that part is very important. Constant contact. A language is like a muscle that grows the more that you work it out, but the more you don't work it out, it shrinks 10 times faster than a muscle. That's why people go to school for 5 years in Spanish, graduate, and still can't speak Spanish. It's because they get, 3 hours a week of Spanish here and Spanish there, and then they're trying to remember what they said last week, and then they don't build on what they've already done. They just kind of relearn the same things. So it is infinitely more valuable to learn a lot in a short amount of time when it comes to a language than to learn a little over a very spread period of time. If you were to spend 2 months in Paris, you would pick up French much better than if you took 10 years of French classes once a month, and it wouldn't be close. Tips for that: get a friend who speaks the language. Know that there's forums, free forums for that. Duolingo, watching shows, listening to podcasts, just having that constantly going. Try not to take a break from the language while you're learning it, because the more time you take off, the harder it's going to be to learn. The next tip is involve all of your senses. The best one is hearing. Okay, so obviously listening, speaking, then seeing it. So reading. People forget about reading and writing. Now, they won't help you as much, at least they didn't for me, as much as listening. Conversations are the biggest thing. But don't forget to read and to write. This is going to reinforce all of the things that you're learning in your conversations. When you're writing them down and you're reading them, it builds confidence. You know how they're spelled. They stick in your brain a lot better. It's really vulnerable to learn a language. It's really embarrassing. It makes you feel kind of dumb. Like there's 3-year-old kids who can speak perfectly and they've got a perfect accent. They know all these words. So it's very humbling experience. So just have fun with it. Everyone goes through that learns a language. You're going to say dumb stuff. People are really understanding. Be able to laugh about yourself. And then the last tip, actually, can't believe I forgot about this. 2 phrases, most important phrases. How do you say blank and what does blank mean? You're going to use those all the time. And I'll give you what they are in Portuguese. How do you say? Como se diz blank? And then what does blank mean? O que significa blank? Okay, those are my tips. Ciao, ciao.